Hi, hello, my name is Gomer Joseph. I hope you've all been having a great day so far. Welcome back to another True Crime Tuesdays video. If you are new, I welcome you. Just like I did last year, for Black History Month, I'll be discussing the sick, horrific crimes which were committed against Black Americans during the Jim Crow era. Though I appreciate that Black History Month highlights the triumphs of Black Americans and allows us to reflect on how far we have come, we must also remember the dark, uncomfortable parts of this nation's history. Today, I will be discussing the Tulsa tragedy. Researching this case, I found it to be heartbreaking and frustrating. It just baffles my mind about the fact that a town that had so much promise and was so prosperous just went away in like a snap of a finger. I encourage you all to do your own research with this case and not just look at my video for all of the information. Here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and start discussing this case by speaking about the time after slavery was criminalized. After slavery is criminalized, free former slaves and their children have moved to different areas in the country to somehow achieve the American dream. A good portion of these former slaves and their children moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, in hopes for a better life, and in order to escape the hatred that they were suffering from. And as these residents moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, they decided to work hard to achieve the American dream. Years later, in 1905, businessman O.W. Gurley, who was one of the richest black men in America during this time, purchased 40 acres of land in the Greenwood area. After purchasing this vast amount of land, he decided to sell to Black Americans to help them succeed in life during the time of segregation. Not only were homes built in this land, but businesses were built as well. Most of these businesses were family run and operated, and as they were being started, there were just a whole bunch of businesses that started being built, like hotels, newspaper publications, movie theaters, healthcare offices, law firms, grocery stores, restaurants. In total, there are about over 200 businesses which were built over time. Education was very important to the people of Greenwood, so they started building schools. Not only was education important, but spirituality was important as well, so churches started being built. As time progressed, the Greenwood district began to start booming, and it was booming to the point where it eventually became known as Black Wall Street, especially by Booker T. Washington, who was known for being a well-known educator and speaker back in those days. While the people in the Greenwood district were prospering, those around this area, especially the white communities, those people in those communities began to feel a sense of jealousy. They were not happy that Black Americans, those who they saw as people who were beneath them or still did not see Black Americans as human at all, they were upset that these Black Americans worked hard to achieve what they had, and they were just very angry that these Black Americans made something for themselves in America, which is supposed to be the land of opportunity. On May 30th, 1921, there was a young man who was 19 years old named Dick Rowland. Dick Rowland was a shoe shiner on Main Street, and that day he entered this building called the Drexel Building, and he went in there to use the segregated bathroom. Little did he know was that his life would change, and so would the life of everyone who lived in the Greenwood district. As Dick entered the elevator in the Drexel Building, he came across a teenager, I believe she was 17, whose name was Sarah Page. Now, I can't confirm it, but from what I gathered, it was possible that these two knew each other but it just wasn't clear as to what extent. What went on in the elevator is extremely conflicting. All I know for sure was that Sarah made a sound, either a scream or something, but it was a loud sound, and Dick started running. But I'm gonna go ahead and discuss the theories before those events take place. So theory one is that the elevator was just a little off balance. Something was wrong with the elevator. Maybe Dick accidentally bumped into her, or he was trying to catch her while falling, and then she screamed that way. That's one theory. There was also another theory that these two were actually lovers who had an argument, and according to, the grapevine, Sarah was actually seen at the Greenwood district plenty of times. But again, these events took place 100 years ago, and clearly Dick and Sarah are no longer here to confirm or deny these statements. The clerk who was working at a clothing store in this building heard Sarah scream and saw Dick rush out of the building. Now let me remind you, this is the 1920s, and it is a big no-no for a black man to be seen alone with a screaming white woman because it could cost him his life. According to the clerk, who clearly could not mind his own business, saw that Sarah was distraught and assumed that Sarah was assaulted, then proceeded to call the cops. Again, as a black man during this time, one of the last things you want is to be accused of even laying eyes on a white woman if she does not want you to lay eyes on her. Even if she does want you to lay, your eyes on her, it was not supposed to happen. The clerk calls the police get involved and begin to question Sarah. Now, according to her, she said that Dick grabbed her arm, but nothing else, and she was not going to press charges against Dick. You would think, common sense tells you that if the so-called victim doesn't want to press charges, then the police and the community would leave it alone and move on. Unfortunately, in this case, that is not what happened. Dick Rowland was found and arrested despite Sarah not wanting to press charges against him. News of his arrest spread, and because of what people were hearing, Dick's life was being threatened, but thankfully Dick was under protection. After the arrest, there was a news article which wrote a major exaggeration from Sarah's claims, which got people mad enough to want to take Dick's life. On May 13th of 1921, Dick went to the local courthouse, and I assume this is where he was going to hear his punishment, or if he might be punished. But the crazy thing was that the courthouse was surrounded by an angry white mob who wanted to take care of him personally. By God's grace, Dick was held by authorities who wouldn't let vile, evil men who couldn't mind their own business take Dick away, and the authorities, or the sheriff, was able to get the mob to go away. Later on, more confusing turn of events would take place. So from what I gathered, the black residents of Greenwood, and a fair amount of them were World War I veterans, they, heard what was going on, and they were ready to use their Second Amendment right and protect Dick Rowland at any cost, despite the founder of Greenwood, O.W. Gurley's, concerns. Long story short, according to the black men who had the right to defend themselves, the sheriff told them to come by the courthouse. According to the sheriff, when asked about this, he claims that he had no idea what the black citizens of Greenwood were talking about. Overall, for both sides, everyone was told to go home. Later that night, there were rumors spreading about a white man who was storming the courthouse. Now, white folks started getting worried and they were getting angry. And as they meet with the black group who showed up to the courthouse, these two groups began to collide. Again, to make a long story short, these two groups start arguing. A white man tries to take a gun out of a black man, but, who was, again, had his Second Amendment right to have that gun, and yet the white man was trying to take the gun away from him. All of a sudden, the gun goes off, and Pandora's box has opened wide. After that shot goes out, the white mob goes bonkers. They are enraged, and they are ready to take out their anger at full force. What really threw me off guard was when I found out that the police, who were really supposed to calm the situation down, decided to supply the angry mob with weapons. And as the mob grew larger and larger, I believe it was about 2,000 men with guns and weapons, they went to the Greenwood area and started shooting at any black citizen they saw and started burning the homes and businesses that the residents worked so hard to build a life in. Just even thinking about it, I just cannot imagine the sorrow and the horror that these poor people felt. That's not even the worst part. From what I gathered, all of a sudden, airplanes start coming out of nowhere. At least 6 airplanes began shooting and dropping bombs on people like they are in the Middle East. Greenwood has literally become a war zone. Word gets out to the governor of Oklahoma, who needed to speak with the local authorities. According to what I saw, that was a law. He was legally supposed to call the local authorities before taking any action. But after speaking with the local authorities, he sends the National Guard out. After 18 hours of chaos, the National Guard arrives, and it seems like they're able to calm the situation down, but they're, like, after 18 hours, like, all the damage is done. People have lost their lives. Later on, I'll explain how many people might have lost their lives, but about 10,000 residents of Greenwood had to flee. And as they left their homes, they left a life of wealth and prosperity, only to become homeless and forced to live in tents in a matter of 18 hours. Now, as the National Guard arrived, from what I gathered, they were told that there was this quote-unquote black uprising. So some of the black residents who were who not supposed to be, they were literally trying to defend themselves. The people who were trying to, protect themselves and stand their ground, they were arrested. But again, they were not the demons who burned down an entire neighborhood. And those demons who did burn down an entire neighborhood, those demons were not arrested when they should have been arrested. But again, hundreds of people lost their lives, and it seems like at least 300 people lost their lives in the span of 18 hours. Again, despite hundreds of people losing their lives, unfortunately, the US government thought to themselves, an entire town has literally burned down right before our eyes. People have lost their lives, like men, women, children. Hey, you know what? Let me not go ahead and see who are all involved and try to charge them for, creating what seems like some sort of genocide in our country. Unfortunately, no one was prosecuted for burning this town in Tulsa, and nobody was prosecuted for taking those lives. And all this really did was create a vast amount of unmarked graves. Time has passed by after this tragedy took place, and there were hopes and there were dreams to rebuild, and people from the town of Greenwood did begin to rebuild. Even though they were rebuilding what was lost, it unfortunately was not as successful as it was before the town was senselessly burned down. But due to gentrification, it was taken away from them. And of course, and I can't even imagine the amount of trauma which took place during this tragedy. But trauma did take place. And because of that, because, those who witnessed these horrific acts of crimes by such demonic people, they were so troubled to even speak about the wickedness that they witnessed. Not only were the victims just troubled to even think or even speak about what they saw, but documents were hidden and destroyed. And again, you know what? Here's the thing. Because the wicked people who burned down this town, the wicked people who took all those lives, they felt like they were doing something wrong. But if you're doing something right, why are you hiding it? You were so bold to burn down an entire town. You were so bold to take the lives of people who did nothing to you. And yet you want to go ahead and erase documents and, and hide documents that really were evidence of all that you have done. On top of that, because of the lack of documents that, would describe the horrific acts of what happened, the school system wasn't really teaching this to kids in school, and that just made a lack of public knowledge in this country. Because of all that scrambled into one, what happened in Tulsa was almost completely forgotten. Currently, Black Americans today are trying to still rebuild the Black-owned businesses in the town of Greenwood in hopes of making it even more successful as it was back then. After over 100 years, it seems like, again, no one was punished for the horrific acts which took place in Tulsa. But the God that I serve, the God of the Bible, is a God of justice. I know for sure that if those monsters who committed those heinous acts did not repent and trust in Jesus Christ alone to save them, then God would have made sure that their crimes were punished. Maybe they weren't punished in this lifetime, but again, without repentance and trusting in Jesus Christ alone to save them, I know for sure that God would make sure that they will be punished in the next lifetime. It's such a shame to know that Black Wall Street could have become more prosperous. I can't even begin to imagine how amazing this place will look like today if those demons didn't burn it to the ground. From what I gathered, if Black Wall Street had been untouched, I honestly believe that it had the opportunity to be just as big as Times Square in New York. Unfortunately, the opportunity was taken away from so many families, so many generations of families, and we'll never know how Black Wall Street would have progressed. All we can do now is work hard with what God has given us and create a legacy of our own today. I thank you all for taking the time in your day to watch this video. If you did like this video, please feel free to hit the like button. If you have any thoughts on this case at all, please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. If you'd like to see more videos from me, please feel free to subscribe and click the bell to be notified about the next video. If there is a certain true crime case that you would like me to cover, go ahead and let me know. I will see y'all for next True Crime Tuesdays, and I will talk to y'all later.